Welcome to Season 4 of the Europol podcast, the official podcast of the EU Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation. This season, we look at the emerging threats and key developments in the field of cybercrime. Episode 4, How Online Fraud Schemes Are Becoming a Growing Threat. In this episode, we look at the criminals behind these schemes, operating highly efficient and transnational industries targeting individuals and organizations alike. To understand how this works, I speak with Jorge Rosal Cosano, head of team at Europol. He explains how online fraud scheme networks employ a wide range of logistical, technical, and financial operations to perpetrate large-scale fraud. Our conversation was recorded during a Europol live expert session. Because the live Q&A already took place, it is no longer possible to ask questions. Take a listen. Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Carlota and I'll be moderating today's session. This is the fourth episode in a series of live expert sessions we've built around the findings of the IOCTA. That's the Europol's Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment. Each session in this series takes one theme from the report and goes deeper with someone who knows one of the key insights inside out. Today, we're tackling one of the fastest growing areas of organized crime right now, online fraud schemes. And to walk us through it, I'm joined by Jorge Rosal Cosano, head of team here at Europol. Jorge, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in what I hope it will be an interesting workshop.
I'm sure it will be. How are you doing today? Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Great.
I'm ready.
Fantastic. So before we dive in, I was thinking maybe you could tell our audience a bit more of what you and your team do and what your day-to-day is like at Europol.
Okay. Yes, as many other operational teams here at Europol, we receive contributions from national law enforcement agencies on a daily basis in our area of expertise, that is the cyber-enabled frauds. And what we do with that contributions is just to cross-check against Europol databases, trying to look for hits and links with other ongoing investigations or with previously contributed data. Once that is done, we try to also to provide some feedback in the form of analytical products. And when we observe or the contribution trigger a link with another ongoing case, we try to coordinate in the best possible way different ongoing investigations against the same criminal predator. And when the case is mature enough, we also try to support potential action days that can be conducted in order to dismantle criminal organizations, providing support on the spot, also coordinating with other units, the forensic support, all the kind of possibilities that Europol is offering. But about the thing, it's not only the daily support that we provide to those cases, it's also that we try to be up to date with the latest trends and threats in the area of online frauds. And for that, we are part or participate actively in different working groups with the private sector and with external stakeholders in order to discuss the latest trends, to see what are the key developments that can affect the citizens and what could be the preventive measures that both the private industry and law enforcement could use in order to tackle this increasing problem.
Okay, thanks for that overview. That was great. So let's set the scene a little before we dive in. The IOCTA findings this year, they flag online fraud schemes as a genuinely fast-growing threat and not the kind of fraud that most people still picture. It's not some lone scammer sending a suspicious email anymore. What we're talking about today are highly organized transnational networks running logistical and technical and financial operations at scale, and increasingly targeting both individuals and organizations directly. So, Jorge, when we say this is one of the fastest growing areas of organized crime, how fast are we actually talking? Is this a gradual shift or has something recently changed that's accelerated it?
Okay, this is something that is growing a lot and in a certain speed, but it's not something that happened from one day to another. It's an evolution that we have observed during the last years. And the reason for that could be many. Probably organized criminal groups are seeing the opportunity that this global world and as you say, all the infrastructure behind of the online fraud schemes can provide them. It could be a very profitable criminal activity for them, probably less risky than traditional criminal activity. Even when they are identified or prosecuted, the sentences that they have to face probably in many cases, but some exceptions are lower than in other criminal activity. So there are many aspects that is making criminal groups move into this criminal activity.
Absolutely. So Today, you're going to walk us through how these networks actually operate, right? So, what's changed recently and what this growing threat means for both the people who end up targeted and for the organizations trying to defend it, to defend against it, sorry. So, Jorge, where do you want to start? What's the first thing people need to understand about how these networks operate?
Okay. As we have included in the IOCTA this year, that is publicly available in the Europol website, online fraud scheme is increasingly growing, and the threat now is targeting, as you mentioned, agencies, individuals in a very wide scope. And the reason for that is because organized criminal groups have the support of a very well-structured infrastructure behind that allow them to conduct massive fraud campaigns. They have the tools, they have all the things needed for conducting this kind of fraud. You were talking in the introduction that when we talk about, or when we think about online fraud, we were thinking about these fraudsters very well skilled in order to conduct isolated attacks. But nowadays, what we are seeing is the proliferation of platforms that are offering crime as a service. So, meaning that there is no need to be a skilled guy in order to conduct this kind of fraud. So it's just going online and look for the services and tools that will allow you to conduct these massive attacks. That is why it has been mentioned how this evolution has evolved to a term called industrialization of fraud, meaning that now the problem is global and that can affect anyone. And the reason for that, as I said, is to have a very well-structured infrastructure behind. There are different aspects that allow the criminals to conduct very successful massive campaigns. I would like to start with phishing. Phishing is the main attack vector in many of the attacks and the cases that we have. And when we are talking about phishing, it's not the classical email with a malicious link that to redirect to a website where they want to steal our credentials. I'm talking about what we see more often nowadays is a lot of cases of SMS, malicious SMS, or phone calls that try to lure victims in order to obtain their personal credentials, their personal information. And the reason for that and why we have seen this evolution to different tactics of social engineering in order to obtain this information is because in the past, many times it was enough just going on the underground markets and try to obtain personal data from victims and exploit that data to conduct fraudulent transactions, account takeovers. Nowadays, with the additional security measures implemented by all the services, operating online is more secure. The implementation of the Know Your Customer and two-factor authentication processes has made that the single fact of having this personal data is not enough. That's why now fraudsters need to approach directly and engage with potential victims to obtain from them directly this extra security layer that is the one-time password that is needed to onboard and to log in many of the services, including the banking applications. That's why we are seeing that interaction in order to obtain that can explain the huge increase of number of phishing and smishing attacks. And also something that is important is how fraudsters are exploiting the domain name system in order to register constantly malicious domains. No matter how fast those domains are reported and blocked and taken down, they can create new ones almost in an automated way. And that is, if we consider, for instance, what is the life of an active phishing domain, maybe it's not longer than 5 days. Since the moment that is registered, it's prepared to be disseminated via SMS or emails after someone detected, reported, and is blocked. But even if with these 5 days, it's enough to target thousands of potential victims. And for instance, if only 1% of the ones who are receiving that just click the link, is a lot of people. If we're talking about 1,000 people being targeted or at least almost defrauded with just a simple attack. Some other infrastructure that they are using, the fraudsters, is new technologies that allow them, as I said, most of the attacks are based on social engineering tactics, and spoofing is one of the most important one and the one that we are seeing in many cases. The reason for that is because obviously there is a lot of awareness about big cases when you are operating online. So when a potential victim receives an SMS or a phone call from an unknown number, the number is not displayed in some cases, or even there is a foreign number, there are less chances that they answer the SMS or reply the phone call. So the fraudsters are aware of this, and they are spoofing this. They are using this spoofing ID caller in order to impersonate financial institutions, law enforcement, shipping companies, and they orchestrate all the narratives around the attack using these numbers, impersonating these institutions. So they have much more chances that the victim answer or the call or reply to the SMS. And just another important aspect here is the abuse of sandboxes. Sandboxes, what they allow fraudsters is to expand the scope of their attacks, having access to multiple victims worldwide. So,
Okay. You mentioned before the words industrialization. I think that says it all. We're not talking about individual scammers anymore. We're talking about a business model. So these crime as a service platforms, are they actually marketed like normal software services, subscriptions, support, all of it?
I wouldn't say. It depends on the kind of service. There are still some of them that are quite limited to the, we could say, cyber criminal networks and community. Some, for instance, phishing kit developers that are offering their services. There's phishing kits via Telegram channels. But some others that, could be offering spoofing services, or the sandboxes. They can be advertised on the clear web, and they are offering the services with the appearance of a legal enterprise. So they have all the infrastructure behind. They have their own employees. They have everything set up as a normal company. The problem is they are also offering their services as a secure one. So in terms of anyone who want to make use of the services, that normally or most of the times they are aware that it will be for criminal activity, they think that those services are secure enough and not traceable by the law enforcement. But in many cases, that is not the case.
Okay. And before we move on, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. You mentioned before the use of social engineering techniques. So if humans are still the weakest link in the equation, even as the systems that we have around us get more secure, would you say, like, is prevention and public awareness still the most important defense here, or has fraud gotten sophisticated enough that awareness alone isn't going to cut it anymore?
Obviously, awareness is still a very important part. And there is a paradox, as I mentioned, that the more secure the systems are, the more cases we are facing. So, and the thing for that is because they are taking advantage of the psychology of the potential victims. They are approaching them with urgent requests, with scary things that can move them in order to take the bait in all these cases. But awareness is still very important. Even with the new technologies and with all the tactics that the criminals are using, they have improved a lot of their narratives, their attacks. There are still many cases reported that following some key rules could be detected and prevented. So it's just, I think it's important to continue with this awareness in order to inform the society how to identify potential cases and prevent them before occur. That means that awareness is the only way to tackle this. Of course not. There is also a lot of measures that can be implemented by the different stakeholders involved in this activity. The financial sector has to improve their systems, also the telecommunication sector. So there is here a joint effort, because just fighting by themselves alone, it will not be succeed. So they will need to join forces and implement many additional security measures in order to prevent this problem.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to working together, doesn't it? Please continue.
Yeah. I mentioned about the sandboxes and how that is giving the opportunity to criminal organizations to expand the scope of their attacks. And basically, a sandbox is a device that can host multiple SIMs at the same time, and that allow the criminals a lot of opportunities. First, if you can hire with those services a number from wherever country you decide to target, that will give you the opportunity. At the same time, that is being used for launch massive phishing or smishing attacks, but also to hide the real identity of the ones who are using it. Those SIM boxes and the SIMs operating from those devices can be used to register in multiple services needed in order to build infrastructure behind all those online fraud schemes. You can register to VPN services, to crypto services, even to create accounts to upload in social media networks fraudulent advertisement in order to lure victims with fake investment platforms. So it's a very demanded service. And when we are talking about the multiple SIM boxes operating at the same time and from the same location, we can talk about the SIM farms. And that is something that we are seeing more often available online. And I would like to refer to one of a big operation that we recently supported against one of these SIM farms services. Probably at that time, the greatest one and the one that was generating more damage and generating more profits, obviously, for the admins. This operation was called SIM Cartel and was started with just some simple cases of smishing and was a fraud that it could be identified the sender of those smishing messages, and all of them lead the investigators to infrastructure established in Latvia. So it was a long process in order to identify more cases and also to amass the infrastructure behind. But after a lot of efforts from the investigators, a lot of coordination, this platform could be dismantled. And at the time of the intervention, it was, I wouldn't say surprise, but because the investigators knew what was going on with this platform, but the level of professionalism and how it was organized, it was huge. So just to give you an idea, at the moment of the search, there were more than 1,000 SIM boxes operating that contain more than 40,000 SIM cards, and plenty of boxes full of SIMs ready to be used. So that means that the volume of potential users that they had that could, after paying a monthly subscription, can choose what kind of numbers from which country they needed. For, as I said previously, for different to register to services, hiding their identity, or just to launch smishing and phishing attacks. And also, the importance of dismantle this platform is the huge volume of data that the law enforcement is still working on.
Those numbers you mentioned earlier for the operation, I think they really put the scale of it all into perspective. Does a case like this feel like a win, or does it feel more like scratching the surface of something much bigger?
I would say it's a win, especially for the investigator working on the case, because it's a lot of work behind of it. But as you say, now when we are talking about the level of how wide the online fraud ecosystem is and how many platforms, how many fraudsters are operating online, dismantling one service like that, even if it's a very, very important operation, it doesn't mean that we will end up with finishing with the problem. But let me explain like data news parallelism. In the past, when, for instance, there was a data breach in a big company, that information from potential multiple and thousands of victims was available in the underground markets. So it can be purchased by potential criminals and exploit that information. When an operation like that take place and the colleagues are able to seize all the infrastructure behind and obtain all the information available, it's like a lawful breach of these criminal platforms that allow the law enforcement to obtain very valuable information that could be valuable for the future cases to identify perpetrators, or even for some cases that were in a dead end to resolve them and to open it again. So it's a very important thing, and that is the strategy that we try to follow. Instead of following the isolated fraudsters that are targeting individuals, just target these crime as a service platform that are making possible that anyone who wants to be involved in fraud has all the tools available online. So dismantling that, we are doing a lot of things. Also damaging the reputation from the admins behind, because obviously those platforms are offered as secure and traceable by the law enforcement, and with a successful case like that, we are sending the message that the law enforcement is working together, and that is not the case. What they were offered is not they can be dismantled. When we talk about the different technologies used by the criminal groups, we cannot forget about a new trend, a threat that is quite worrisome, especially for the financial sector, and is when I'm talking about the relay attacks. That is an important problem for the financial institution, but also for the final users of their services, because it's a problem that is, or is a threat that is very difficult to detect, difficult to prevent, and difficult to investigate. So is something that we are putting a lot of emphasis on trying to work on it. When we are talking about relay attacks, basically a relay is a device, or these attacks, the tactic or the technique is just to relay in real time the transaction information from a victim or from the car from a victim to a device controlled by the fraudsters that allow them to conduct what apparently are legit transactions. The problem here is very difficult to detect, as I say, because when I refer to the first cases that we received a couple of years ago, is what we call the cases from terminal to terminal. Basically, is when a victim is going to operate their credit card in an ATM. The ATM was the fraudster had included a shimmer there that could intercept the communication between the chip of the card and the card reader, and that information was relayed with a relay device located very near to the ATM to another device controlled by the fraudster that could be 20 meters away, that 20,000 kilometers away. That is the real threat, or the importance of this threat, because it can happen that there is what we call these Superman transactions, but it's impossible that someone can be in two places so distant between them in a matter of seconds. And the thing is, for the victim, they don't see anything strange, and they just operate in their car. The legit transaction is delayed a little bit because the shimmer sends some commands to the card reader in order to delay the transaction, just the time needed for the fraudsters to receive the information, including the PIN that could have been captured via a micro camera, and conduct the fraudulent transaction. So only once the victim days later, or depends how often they have a look to their bank statement, they can see a transaction that they don't recognize because, okay, I've never been in this country, what happened here? So they go to the bank just have a look to the records, and apparently the transactions are legit. Both of them are chip and PIN authorized, so nothing happened. And also when they go to the police to report the case, for the police, it can be handled as a scheming or something, but there was not a clear idea at that time what was going on. That's why I say that it's very difficult to detect, prevent, and react against them. And obviously, as all the cybercrime and all the online frauds, they are evolving, and fraudsters are looking for the ways to make their attacks more secure and with less risk. And now we are seeing cases of what we call from car to terminal. In this case, the social engineering part plays a very important role in this attack, because the fraud starts with the victims being approached or being targeted with different SMS or phishing emails, and they are convinced to download a malicious application, and with social engineering tactics to provide all the data about their car, all the financial data, and also even the one-time password that allow the victims to obtain the fraudsters, to obtain all the information needed to conduct the relay attacks. And sometimes there are different varieties in this car to terminal. Sometimes the victim is convinced to tap the card against the mobile phone that is already included with the malicious application. That data is relayed to another device controlled by the fraudsters that allow them to cash out money or to purchase different stuff in different point of sale terminals. And that is why, as I say, this is very worrisome problem for the financial sector. And since the moment we started to see the problem, we initiated or participated in public-private partnerships with some of the working groups that we are involved with the private industry, in order to find for potential solutions, not only first to detect the cases, and secondly, what could be implemented in order to prevent the cases. And from our side, from Europol side, also to raise awareness about the law enforcement community, because obviously central cybercrime units are aware of this kind of attacks, but it can happen in any small place in all the countries. So when the call is taking the police complaints or the official complaints from the victims, probably they are not aware what is going on, and they are not handled properly, because those cases could be linked with some others in other cities. So it's good that to raise awareness about this problem. Apart from the relay attacks, as one of the key findings included in the IOCTA, we have to talk about now artificial intelligence, probably the trending topic everywhere, how it's affecting all our lives in all the aspects of it. But obviously, artificial intelligence is also having a huge impact in online frauds. How is making criminals to be more effective, and to have expanded reach that they can have when targeting victims. They have improved, the AI has improved a lot the way that they can produce and prepare emails on SMS in a very professional way, also overcoming the barrier that the language could be, because now with the different models, they can use any language and target any victim from anywhere, so without any obstacles. Also, it's allowing fraudsters to create deep fakes that can be used to create very convincing website offering fraudulent investment fraud platforms. Also using the image from celebrities to advertise those services, and also creating voice or image and deep fakes and that are very much exploited in cases of SEO fraud, impersonating some persons and being very convincing attacks. Also, the AI is increasing the automation for many of those attacks. When we are thinking about some of the structure that are behind of these for the schemes, they require a lot of resources. They have very well structured roles for the members of the organized criminal group that in the future, or even already now, that can be automated thanks to the AI. We can think about these large scam compounds or call centers where there are people exploited and calling people during 20 hours or 16 hours, just trying to convince them to provide the information or scan them with different modus operandi. So when the AI develop properly, they can create these perfect bots that can act as with a perfect human voice and have the capability to interact perfectly with the victims, to keep a conversation and even learn of the and adapt the attack. So it's something that we could see that are at the beginning of this stage, but if the AI technology evolves as quick as it seems is evolving, it's something that we can face very, very fast. And something else about the AI, we can think that the fraudsters are creating their own models. That could be the case in some cases, but most of the time, and for the usage that I have already mentioned, they are using commercial LLMs available. It's just to adapt them to their needs, but it's something that is available for everyone. And with this scary outlook about how many threats we have, and it's something that we can think that we are losing the battle against online fraud. I wouldn't say that. I have to say that there are many ongoing activities in order to prevent and to tackle this problem, and we could mention some of them. For instance, when we were talking about the domain name system abuse, there is a need to broaden the DNS abuse definition, including the technical aspect, but also the illegal content online, in order to give a more comprehensive response. Also, to improve the cross-border cooperation, facilitating that the reaction from the law enforcement, as we are talking about cross-border crimes, so the reaction from the law enforcement can be quicker and more efficient. Also, to make stricter controls when people want to register domains, to have more strict KYC policies in order to facilitate the identification of the malicious registration, but also to investigate once those domains has been used for fraudulent activities. Regarding the fraud prevention, it's also very important. When we are talking about fraud prevention, it's not only about awareness. It's just to create the tools for all the actors involved in the fight against cybercrime and against especially online fraud, to have the platform in order to share in real time indicators of fraud that can allow to react quicker. So it's the way. There are already some ongoing projects to create such a platform, and this platform should include everyone. We are not referring just to financial sector, because as I mentioned, telecommunication sector, the big social media platforms has a very important role to play in this fight, because their systems or their services are misused most of the times at the first in the first stages of the attacks. So the creation of these platforms allowing the real-time information sharing are needed. Talking about the sandboxes and how we have seen the proliferation of these services, there is a need also to reinforce the controls in order to monitor or control who is purchasing SIM cards. And for that, there is a need to know better, maybe to make more stricter controls, because the regulation in different countries is very different. In some countries, it's needed to present a personal ID or passport, and you have limited number of cards that can be purchased. purchased, sorry, while in some others there is no limitation. In the case that I mentioned before, in SIM cartel, there was no one single person purchased 6,000 SIM cards. And in some others also, there is no need for an ID. So anyone can go to a kiosk and purchase a SIM card that later on can be exploited in this kind of devices. And obviously, the demand of this kind of devices is because they can provide the service needed. And without we could say, the thing that can fit those devices, that is the SIM cards. If the things are more complicated for the fraudsters to purchase them worldwide, it will be make things more difficult to develop this kind of SIM boxes. Regarding also digital finance, we are talking about how easy or how fraudsters are trying to open multiple bank accounts, not only in traditional banking system, but also with the neobanks in order because they need to move fast the proceedings from the criminal activity. So also having a very strict KYC, know your customers procedures in order to get on board potential customer on those financial services is basic. Also for align the regulation on crypto, that is important. Also align the regulation between different jurisdictions is something important. And last but not least, we have been talking about how artificial intelligence is impacting and is making the online fraud ecosystem evolve. So we have to leverage also that possibility. Law enforcement have to leverage the possibilities that the AI is offering. When we are talking about online fraud schemes, anytime we are dealing with a huge amount of data. And without the proper tools, it's almost impossible to handle them in a very or to analyze it in a very efficient way. So having equipped the law enforcement with the AI tools that can automate many of the processes and get everything that this information can give to us is essential.
Jorge, thank you so much for that. That was a really useful overview. I'm sure the audience agrees. And that brings us to the part that I know a lot of you have been waiting for. We've had Slido open throughout the session. So if you've already sent in a question, thank you. Let's start with a broad one about awareness. What can the public do to protect themselves from online fraud schemes? How can they avoid re-victimization?
Okay, it's not an easy question, but at the same time, there are many tips that are available for them in order to implement and try to prevent becoming a victim of these online fraud schemes. Obviously, it's just to be cautious anytime that you receive an email or an SMS asking to click on a link. That is something, this is a general and key rule, not click on links when we don't know or we don't have certain information about the sender. Also, just to think that some of the offers that can be available in many online platforms, when it's too good to be true, probably is because it is. So anytime that you are thinking to get involved in this kind of opportunities, think twice. As I say, it's just a deep breath in order to see, okay, it can be real or not, or even to check with friends and relatives about it before making a decision, because obviously, fraudsters are playing with as I said, with the psychology of the potential victims, and they send very convincing narratives, and they try to play with the urgency or a kind of alert that if you don't do it now, it will be worse. So they are playing with that. But in any case, I think they have to be the victims have to be aware of what going on. So to have some kind of knowledge about the different frauds there is also important. Also to have the typical ones, to have a secure password, to have your systems updated with the latest software versions. All those are some tips that can be used. And as I said, there are very sophisticated cases, or sometimes when the victim is devices have been compromised, is difficult to detect. But many of these phishing and smishing attacks just apply many times and those kind of tips, just thinking twice before making a decision, or just thinking or asking for some advice. It can be enough in order to prevent being a scam.
You mentioned at the end of your presentation the creation of accounts, of multiple accounts, not just in traditional banks, but also in newer accounts. We have a question related to that. What role do neobanks and fast customer onboarding processes, what role does this play in facilitating fraud?
Okay, so that's saying that the neobanks are facilitating fraud, probably it wouldn't be fair. I think neobanks is something very useful for multiple potential users. They are making life easier in order to create a bank account. So it's not limiting the customer to open an account from your own country. So they are giving a lot of good things, I would say, for the potential customers. This the way that they facilitate everything, it hasn't been considered as facilitating of crime. It's obviously fraudsters take advantage of all the opportunities that they have, and when they see the opportunity to create accounts on those kinds of services, they can use different modus operandi. They can impersonate people. They can use counterfeited documents. There are many ways to do so. So here is the important thing for these neobanks is to balance the friendly user experience for the customers with very strict KYC policies implemented in order to prevent as much as possible all the illegal or subscription to these services.
We have a very interesting one regarding AI. How has AI influenced the fraud trends? For example, picking up a call might be dangerous because they can record your voice and replicate it with AI, that kind of thing. How has it influenced the trends?
Obviously has influence. As I mentioned before, it has to have an impact that can make all the attacks much more professional. It can be more realistic. So nowadays, almost everyone can have some, as you say, someone can record your voice and use that to create a fake, a deep fake that can be used for shop calls, maybe calling to some of the relatives saying that you need some help and asking them for some money. So it has a huge impact. So here is a kind of race. Obviously, the AI is there, and the fraudsters are leveraging the possibility that it offers to them, but also the financial sector and the other sectors are trying to leverage the opportunities that they have to implement the preventive measures and to detect them before it's too late. So we need to be aware. As I said, it's good to be up to date by the. I don't want to scare the society, but to say, okay, you are aware of what's going on there. So just to be careful when providing the same data, do not provide your personal data. Try to be careful what kind of files you are uploading online that could be later on exploited thanks to these AI tools.
So let's talk more about the perpetrators now. What is the main path for fraudsters to target victims? Is it SMS to random numbers, leaked emails, social media ads, etc.?
Yeah, all of them. You
All
have
of the
this, all of
above?
them, obviously. Yes. As I mentioned before, we have seen as an increase most of the times of the phishing and smishing attacks. So sending us many times this modus operandi or these tactics are combined. So the attack can start with an email or an SMS, just providing some extra information. And when they obtain, they are able to obtain the attention from the potential victims, the second stage is that the fraudster called them in order to elaborate more the narrative and the attack. So nowadays it's very easy with all the technology that I have referred previously to send thousands of SMS to randomly multiple potential victims. There are, of course, some cases that the attacks are very targeted. So there has been selected victims for different reasons. It could be part of a business email compromise, but also some phishing specific attacks because they know the profile of the victim and they are putting the efforts there. But most of the cases, what we are seeing here is randomly massive smishing attacks with SMS use to get or to reach as much as possible, as much victims as possible, and also phone calls. Those are different tactics. There are, as I said, something that I not mentioned before, but for instance, we have seen how they are using SMS blasters. That is a kind of a fake cell tower that they deploy those devices in crowded places, and they intercept the communication between all the people in a certain ranch with the cell tower. And what they can do is to establish connection, 2G connection with these potential victims and disseminate this SMS. So there are a lot of tactics there. And I would say that despite there are cases with very, very targeted, most of them are just randomly sent. And as I said, if you send 1,000 SMS or make hundreds of calls on a daily basis, even if a small percentage of them are deceived, is a lot. It's a matter of figures.
We have one about Europol more generally. What is Europol doing to protect citizens from scams?
I hope a lot of things. From one side, obviously, dismantling these big structures, there's a big infrastructure behind all the online frauds is an important part. Obviously, sending the message to the criminal community that we are working, that we are supporting law enforcement from different countries. That would be from the reactive side, we would say, just trying to identify, arrest, and prosecute the criminals. But also, we have been doing a lot in terms of awareness and prevention. When we are talking awareness, anyone who can visit the Europol website, they can see how all the material that is available there. Obviously, being a European agency, we prepare many times that material in different languages that can be very accessible for anyone who want to check that. And this material is normally focused or customized in different criminal areas. Always talking about online frauds. There are some material focused on SIM swapping, how is conducted, what is SIM swapping, how to be detected. We got some other with general rules when purchasing online. So some rules that need to be taken or at least considered where purchasing in different merchants. Also, there are specific materials focused on money muling. Money muling is a very important aspect when we are talking about online fraud schemes, because at the end, the criminal organizations, all the proceedings from the criminal activity, they need to move it fast. And they are recruiting people, some cases the elderly, some cases the people in economic distress, or sometimes youngsters who can provide their bank accounts, receiving just a part in terms of compensation. So creating this kind of material can raise awareness about the potential targeted victims. And this is something that we have been done for years. The only thing is we need to look for the cooperation with the private sector in order to reach as much people as possible. Obviously, Europol is a law enforcement agency, so we work normally with law enforcement agencies, and the material is more visited by colleagues working in this area. But when we prepare campaigns to be launched in a coordinated way with private partners, we can reach out to much more people, and that is the way. As I said, awareness is not the only way to prevent cases, but it's a very important part still. Because although the cases are better, more professional, and more difficult to be detected, still many of them could be prevented implementing the due diligence, we could say.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great answer. And I think it also comes back to what we were saying, that when we work together, we can achieve more in general. I think that's a good place to leave it. We could honestly keep going with the questions, but that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. Jorge, thank you so much for walking us through all of this and for being so generous with your answers.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me to take part in this webinar, and I hope it was interesting for the audience who was watching.
I'm sure it was. This wraps up not just today's session, but the whole live expert series, which we built around this year's IOCTA. Over these 4 episodes, we've covered a lot of ground. We started by looking at how cybercrime enablers are facilitating crime more broadly. Then we went into how CSAM offenders are adapting to new technologies, followed by how ransomware is evolving, and today, how online fraud schemes are becoming a growing threat. So together, these 4 sessions, they give a much fuller picture of where organized crime is heading online right now. What stood out across this whole series is how much these threats keep evolving and how much work goes on behind the scenes to keep pace with that. Today's conversation on fraud schemes, I think, was a very good example of that. Highly organized, resourceful, and constantly adapting, but so is a response to it. So, Jorge, before we close out completely, are there any final thoughts you want to leave people with, leave the audience with? Maybe advice on how to protect themselves or where you see this heading in future, whatever feels most useful to you.
I think that we have already talked about tips in order for the citizens in general to detect cases. And the important thing here is even there are a lot of news. IOCTA is highlighting how this threat is increasing alarmingly. But I think there are a lot of things to do in order to tackle or to fight this threat. And as I mentioned before, it's something that has to be done jointly. It's not possible to tackle successfully this problem if we are not cooperating together. So I would like to highlight many of the partnerships that are ongoing in cooperation with the different sectors, and I think that is the way. So improving the cooperation between the law enforcement internationally I'm talking about, but also between different sectors is for, and everyone has to put their part in trying to win this fight on the regulators, financial sector, telecommunication providers, law enforcement, and obviously the citizens being aware of the trending threats in this area, to be aware of any potential scam that they could be targeted with.
You've heard all about how online fraud schemes are a growing threat, as highlighted in our annual Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment report. If you would like to know more about the key cyber threats affecting the EU, including child sexual abuse material, ransomware, and online fraud schemes, you can listen to all the episodes of this season on whichever platform you use. And if you liked the episode, consider giving us a like, subscribing, or sharing the podcast with others. You can find links to the Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment, or IOCTA report, and the other resources mentioned in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you soon.